Chapter 27. The Gifts. 10th hour, 19th day, 5th month, 807 post-heavenfall.
Descending clouds loom from distant hills. The path home is swallowed by the mist. A single seed falls into the cold mire, far from the sun's warm and golden gaze. It weeps for the warm earth it lost, but drinks the bitter black water to rise. Leaves flutter in the air under shroud, and the stalk stiffens against the unseen wind. Though the air becomes still once again, the roots grip the deep, waiting for the rain. 海赠.
News of the Night Mother's demise quickly spread throughout Ovyliax, and was soon followed by stories of the recent victims recovering from their coma. Despite lingering apprehensions of the coven still being active, the lack of medical cases between the growing number of days allowed many citizens to finally breathe a sigh of relief. Both the Sentinels and Wardens were hailed as city saviours for subduing the hag, while Second Sentinel Raza was used as the public face, or rather, mask of heroism. Only a select number were aware of the promised awards granted to Father Gama, while even fewer knew the identities of the candidates involved. Such was the nature of being a Sentinel. The most genuine gratitude ever received was usually delivered quietly from the powers above. Ariya, regardless of the form of praise, was extremely delighted to be notified by mail that a transfer of 100 gold coins had been sent to her bank from the Ulgarfen government. It was enough money to furnish a modest apartment, own a private carriage, or purchase dozens of fine outfits if she so desired. With the investigation concluded, the initiates returned to their studies and the final classes of the semester. Instructors hurried to push as much material before the deadline of exams, while their students scrambled to be ready. When the week arrived, Ariya's first evaluation had her return to the outdoor arena behind the academy, where Sentinel Shaylin awaited them. Like the beginning of the year, he had them join together in the same pairs to recreate initial assessment and observe how much they had improved. This time, however, the candidates were free to use any weapon and spells at their disposal until their opponent yielded or was knocked out. The loser of the first duel was also free to choose the arena environment, to which Zarin selected a forest. Unlike the sudden knockout previously delivered, the months of experience and training turned the match into a nail-biting game of cat and mouse between the range of Zarin's rifle and his opponent's stealth. Despite Ariya silently moving through the thicket of the forest, the gunman had finally honed his senses to the point he could approximate her position from the faint scent of perfume in the breeze. The near misses from his gun and the snap of air made it obvious that Zarin would not give her a chance to sneak and end things quickly. He knew her techniques too well and would fall back, reposition, and keep her at bay with firepower. Realizing Zarin was expertly tracking her, Ariya decided to respond with swift aggression. As he cocked back the bolt of the rifle, she broke cover and charged with bursts of arc, propelling her feet forward. Zarin took aim, but the elf threw a rock, which impacted his forehead, and gave her the opportunity to close the distance. She was immediately on him with a flurry of blades, which caused him to instinctively parry with his rifle, but clumsily drop it in the assault. Even after months at the academy, there was still no contest as to how much more skilled and dangerous Ariya was in close combat. Her Jian cut and slashed away at his Aegis to shreds, quickly draining the body's ability to protect itself. Zarin would have conceded if he was still the inexperienced initiate who had first joined the academy, but he had learned of a few tricks of his own to counter the inevitable situation of a melee. As she lunged for a stabbing coup de grace, the gunman whipped out a pistol and pressed a button under his thumb to extend a spring-loaded bayonet under the barrel. His arms moved in a wide swipe to deflect away the Jian, leaving Ariya wide open for him to fire a shot of arc into her abdomen. The elf's own Aegis absorbed the blast, but the impact was concussive enough that she staggered backwards as if clubbed. Zarin immediately backed away, cocking the gun's hammer and delivering another shot to his comrade. Yet to his shock, Ariya used the momentum of the impact to roll to the side before springing forward and pouncing. Once again, her sword stung at Zarin as he tried to defend himself with the bayonet, but the disparity of reach translated to his arm receiving a lashing of attacks. He could feel each subsequent strike cut deeper as his Aegis thinned to paper. Yet, Zarin also noticed his opponent was moving slower and still wincing from the gunshots. In a final gambit, he shifted the dominant side of his body back and reached out with his free hand. It grabbed her wrist downward, while his other hand pointed the pistol right at her chin, with the bayonet millimeters from her throat. "Yield?" Zarin asked with a hint of desperation. Ariya's eyes glared in contempt, but gradually relaxed as she realized her options for winning were spent. "Fine," she relented. Shaylin cheerfully congratulated Zarin on the victory, while praising them both for showcasing how much they had improved since the start of the semester. Echoing Valeria, the Sentinel once again suggested Ariya to begin training with an offhand implement, to which she now felt much more inclined to look into. As disappointed as she was to lose the match, she was relieved to know Zarin had recovered well enough to offer her a significant challenge, and decided to treat him to a victory meal afterwards. The next day's exam with Father Gama was less extraneous, with the students assigned an essay on a hypothetical confrontation between two imaginary regions and what strategic plan they would propose to handle the situation. After carefully studying a presented map and noted areas she would have deployed troops to defend, as well as where she would have set up makeshift hospitals, supply caches, shelters for the townspeople, and routes of escape and retreat, the overall goal was to project the idea of impenetrable defense, along with resilient people, even if they were at a disadvantage in strength. If the opposing force could be deterred from attack, they could then propose a list of solutions that could be brought up during diplomatic negotiations. Unfortunately, she had spent too much time brainstorming and trying to write out her earlier points eloquently that she hit the deadline before she could finish. Sentinel Dane's marksmanship final involved a large activity course with 5 different target ranges and weapons for each. The candidates were judged on both time and precision, with each miss incurring a penalty of time to complete the course. The stations were spaced out far enough that they would have to sprint to each one, adding the complication of needing to calm breathing and heart rates in order to steady the subtle motions of their aim. With the first weapon, the dwarven rifle, Ariya struggled with great difficulty, as she had with the previous lessons. Unlike Zarin and Kellin, who had ample practice, the complex mechanisms of the different parts made it almost impossible to channel her arc into the chamber. The times when she did manage to do so resulted in the round either not reaching a fast enough velocity to hit the target, or missing altogether, as the muzzle flash and boom would always startle her and cause her to flinch or blink in anticipation. Ariya embarrassingly ran out of time at the station and was told to move on to the next. The second one had her throwing knives, to which she had somewhat better results. The significantly simpler nature of the blade made it so she could push arc to accelerate its trajectory and make up for her lack of arm strength. However, her technique needed refinement, which resulted in her first throw bouncing off the target and having to correct for the subsequent, more successful hits. Ariya had similar results with the slingshot, which also found its mark 2 out of 3 times. Only when she moved onto the bow and then crossbow stations did she feel the most confident. Having spent the most time practicing the techniques of both yielded a much more positive result that made up for the lost time on the previous challenges. As for the last day's assessment in urban infiltration, Valeria excused Ariya from needing to attend, since the Sentinel felt she had more than proven her abilities by dealing with the Night Mother. 2 days before Ariya returned home to Eden, the results were sent to her arcane mailbox, and she was pleased to learn that she had passed all her courses. Sentinel Dodak had also attached a copy of his evaluation, which read, "Candidate Ariya Malanti possesses a surprising amount of grit and qualities that are in line with becoming a competent sentinel. What she lacks in raw strength, she compensates with exceptional agility and tactical adaptability that makes her a useful asset when properly supported. If she can learn to temper her idealism with the necessary realities of this profession, she has the potential to become an exceptional member for the organisation." His words gave her a sigh of relief, since she thought his critiques would be much more barbed. Unexpectedly, there were 2 more letters of invitations to meet within the city. One came from Aston Silvercheck, while the other was from a stranger, but said to come to a place deeply familiar. Ariya sent her own messages of reply to each and confirmed her appointment before leaving the academy grounds. It had been almost a month since Ariya had returned to the rune shop, ever since Aston had closed it in bereavement of his daughter-in-law. Ursha eventually reopened in his stead, but told Ariya to focus on her studies and prepare for exams. When the elf arrived at the front, she noticed a cart hitched to a donkey was parked at the front near the front door, left unusually ajar. At first, she thought someone had come to make deliveries. However, the sight of Ursha carrying out a crate told a different story. "Do you need any help?" Ariya asked as she rushed to aid the elderly dwarf. "Oh, thanks. This one was a bit unwieldy." After they dropped the crate into the cart and slid it into place, Ursha reached up for a hug, to which Ariya hunched low to reciprocate. "It's so good to see you again. How's everything been? Did your exams go well?" "They did. I managed to pass them all, and I also received some feedback from my advisor that was much more positive than I expected." "That's great. Does that mean you're one of the Sentinels now?" "Not yet. I still have a bit to go, but perhaps I'll be one by next year if all goes well." "It'll be fine for you. You're smart and a very hard worker. A year will come by faster than you know it." "I certainly hope so," Ariya smiled as her eyes wandered to the cart laden with packed items. "What's going on here?" Ursha's warm facade faded to melancholy as she also glanced in the same direction. "I guess no one's told you. Aston's decided to sell the shop." "He did? Maybe that's why he asked me to come." "That would make sense. I can take you to him." Ursha led her into the foyer, past the glass clockwork statue, and into the main chamber. A couple of staff packed equipment and furniture away, while another swept the floor, and gave them a passing nod while they moved through. As they entered the back workshop, Aston was on the floor, sorting papers into different messy piles. The elf was about to greet the gnomish owner, when a boy's voice called out. "Lady Ariya!" Hans exclaimed as he set aside the coined runes he was organising to come give her a hug. Like with Ursha, Ariya had to crouch lower to embrace him, but noticed how much tighter he squeezed than the dwarf. "How are you doing?" she asked gently. "I'm so sorry about your mother." The boy's expression darkened for a brief flash before shifting to one of stoic maturity. "It's all right. Dad tells me her spirit is still on Haven, and she's been reborn somewhere, so we may be able to meet again. Although, Grandpa thinks she's done enough good deeds to be one of the Celestial Watch and protect us." "And which do you think is true?" Hans shrugged. "I'd be happy for Mum either way." "He's often asked about you," Aston noted with a chuckle as he joined the conversation. "When is Lady Ariya coming back to work? I told him she's studying hard, so you should too." "I pray the exams went well." She nodded. "Well enough. I was even excused from one of them for outstanding performance throughout the semester. See, Hans, it's not just about doing well on tests. You have to put in effort the whole year." "I guess," the boy muttered. "Could you help Ursha with tidying? There's some matters I'd like to talk to Ariya about privately for a bit." "Come along, Hans," Ursha ushered. The child made a sound of protest, but followed out the threshold. As soon as his footsteps were beyond earshot, Ariya spoke. "My deepest condolences for your family's loss. If there is anything I can do to help, Please don't hesitate to ask. Thank you. The gnome gave a faint smile of appreciation. It's been hard on us, especially Hans, but we are fortunate to have many family members close by and friends to support. Even so, this business was as much Cather's as it was mine, so to know she's gone feels debilitating. Aston turned his head to look at a cluttered work table at the far side of the shop. I've been hesitant to clean out her station, so it's been in that state since she became ill. Don't move my things around, Papa. I can't find them when you do. She'd tell me that every time I tried to reorganise her space, including the last day before she stopped coming to work. I suppose now that her spirit has returned to the cycle, it's been left as if a memorial of sorts. It's a very foolish thought, but I like to imagine if in many years' time, Cather's new form remembers this place, and she returns to see this exactly as it was. It's not foolish. There's also been some rare cases of people remembering their previous life. I'm not going to hold my breath for such a day, but it'll be something I can dream of. Regardless of my wishes, it'll have to be cleaned for the next owner of this place. Would you like me to help with that? It might be easier. No, I promised I would take care of it myself. I just wanted to make it one of the last things. I understand, she said with an empathetic nod. So who are you setting the shop to? A new enterprise, apparently. Have you ever heard of the World Wide Web? Can't say I have. The name sounds a little dystopian. Hans made a small chuckle. They started as porters to help small businesses sell their items outside of their locality. Seems like they've done well enough to set up brick-and-mortar locations now. The one who will be managing this spot is named Maurice. He's not at all what I expected, but after speaking to him, I'm confident this place will be in even better hands. It'll be a tough act to follow. Will they also be doing runesmithing? I'm not sure. It sounded like they wanted to keep much of the equipment, so I would imagine they'll focus on arcane items. Speaking of which, Aston moved over to his own work table and retrieved a felt pouch bigger than his palm. I used to watch creatures when I was younger, but my knees are not as oiled as they used to be, he said before handing it to Ariya. The elf loosened the drawstring and pulled out a short and skinny tube of dark metal. A spyglass, she said, with surprise, before sounding flustered. I can't accept this. No, please take it. I'm sure you'll find more use of it in your profession than me keeping it in my desk to collect dust. I didn't get you anything, though. And you should never feel like you have to. Believe me, I have more than plenty. Even with the Cather gone and the store going away, I still have much to be thankful for, and I'm blessed with enough to do. Helping to raise hands will be a new job of its own. Ariya looked past the open doorway and watched Hans and Ursha carry a crate outside. He's in very good hands, she commented, as they disappeared out of sight. 1, 2, 3! A stern voice bellowed from the back of the chamber, followed by the uniform shuffling of dozens of feet and the impacting crash of wood. 2 rows of lightly clothed and muscle-bound men and women held training staves against each other and drilled the instructed manoeuvres. Each side alternated between being the aggressor and the defender, and repeated the same series of hits and parries. The man at the head of the room continued to count at a faster pace, forcing the warriors to repeat the motions at an increased tempo. In spite of this, the warriors continued to move and strike with perfect precision and control. So this is how the paladins of Tyran practice, Ariya whispered. She stood in the back of the same temple nave where the Night Mother was defeated, eyes mesmerised by the choreography. Even with their blunt weapons, she could tell they hit with lethality in mind, where one misstep could cause serious injury. It was a deep contrast to the techniques taught by the Sentinels, which focused more on self-defense rather than trying to land a killing blow. She would have found the spectacle more enjoyable if not for the fact the ambient temperatures had been arcanely reduced to freezing. Even as Ariya shivered and pulled her arms closer for warmth, None of the disciples appeared to be bothered by the cold. Still, she was so transfixed by the display that she failed to notice an aide approaching her. "Tyrann protects," he greeted with a salute involving his arms and open palms forming a T-shape across the chest. "Are you in need of assistance, my lady?" "Yes, good evening. I received a letter and was invited to meet someone here." Ariya unfolded the piece of paper and handed it over. The aide skimmed the contents and studied the signature, before returning the letter with a curt bow and walking away. The elf watched him move to the front of the nave, where he whispered in the ear of the drill instructor. His enumeration halted as they exchanged words, but the warriors continued their drills without pause. The aide retreated into the back rooms, while the instructor stepped away from the dais and headed towards Ariya. As he came closer, she saw that he was a mountain of a human who towered over his followers without the elevation of the platform and was estimated to be nearly 7 feet tall. He had a shaved head of tanned skin and thick eyebrows tilted downward in an eternal scowl, while the wrinkles on his hands and face revealed him to be an individual in his 50s. "Tyrann protects!" He repeated the blessing with more enthusiasm than the aide. "It is by their fate that we meet once again." Ariya was puzzled by the latter remark, before remembering where she had seen his face. "I suppose it is," she exclaimed upon the realization. "You were the one in jail the night the student from Patoya passed away in her cell those months ago." "Indeed I was. My incarceration was not a proud moment to witness, yet I stand by my actions and would not have done anything differently against the blaspheming scoundrel." She was mildly curious to ask about what he was charged for, but chose not to press. "I deeply apologize, but your name is unfortunately not something I recall. The fault lies in my own mistake for not introducing myself properly. I am Father Azorius Wu IV, a humble servant to the founder of Justice and War," he said with a low bow. "Ariya Malanti," the elf returned the gesture, before nodding to the warriors nearby. "Your disciples are all extremely impressive. They make ready for war in the north and the bitter cold that awaits them. They're almost prepared, but there are many rough edges that need to be rounded out before I send them off to battle. I will not have my order be dishonoured in defeat or a poor showing, especially with much time lost in my absence from that witch's curse. That said, I requested your presence to offer 1,000 thanks. When I was infirmed with that insidious affliction, I prayed for the Celestials to send an angel and release me from her death grip. Tyrann heard my calls and moved their hand of judgment through you. You are my saviour, and for that, I am indebted to you." Ariya's mouth hung open in astonishment before stammering. How did you discover I was involved?" Father Azorius pointed to the rune on top of the entrance's doorframe. "We guard sacred relics and artifacts that require security, so we've made sure to have ways of logging who comes and goes. I initially thought my ailment was of a natural pathogen and did not think to review them for an intruder. Upon my recovery, I wanted to know who was responsible for stopping the Night Mother and saw a band of sentinels smited her. However, I noticed you had also gone in alone before the battle itself, suggesting you were the scout who led them to the hag. The local wardens confirmed the details when I interrogated them. Vivid scenes of that fateful night flashed in the elf's mind, causing her to hold herself tighter. I'm sorry I wasn't quick enough to save the other cleric living here with you." Azorius's lips curled briefly at the mention of them, and she noticed his rugged demeanour soften. "Father Demetrian's death was a lamentable loss, and I pray the Celestials have accepted his spirit to the watch. His safety and life was not your charge, so do not feel guilt for his passing. The founder wanted you at the exact moment you were meant to be. Relish in victory and the fact you not only saved my life, but all those who would have been that monster's victims." The both of them noticed the aide had returned to the front of the nave with a small and flat box wrapped in leather. "Brother Mathieu has returned. If you would do me the honour of following me, I would like to present you with a gift," the cleric said as he motioned toward the altar. The two of them walked to the front of the church, where the massive statue of Tyran loomed overhead, with their head tilted down in silent judgment. When Ariya and Father Azorius reached the foot of the statue, the priest called out to his followers, "Attention to the front, disciples!" The warriors immediately stopped their drills and arrayed themselves in a series of neat rows. As many of you know, our city and our very covenant was recently assaulted by vile desecrators and murdered our beloved Father Demetrian. Yet the crone that plagued these walls could not escape the holy retribution of Tyran, and was slain right here on the very ground you stand. "Tyran protects!" shouted one of the audience. The rest of them gave a triumphant shout and stamped their staves on the ground. "Rightly so! And through this woman and the sentinels did their blade cut down the heretic and sent her spirit to the hellfires of Tartarus. I present to you Ariya Malanti, Sentinel of the Hegemony." The disciples drummed the ground with their staves, and despite the freezing ambience, Ariya could feel the temperature in her body rise, and her face becoming flush with embarrassment. She stood frozen, only managing to put on a sheepish grin in front of all the attention of strangers. "As a representative of the ones who slew the Night Mother, I wish to award you with this." The aide brought the box up to Father Azorius, who unlocked the clasps and lifted the top. Inside was a polished dagger with aquilions shaped like curving wings. "This blade is given to each one of us who joins the covenant of this church as an oath-sworn champion. Although you have not been inducted into our order, your actions have earned you an honorary title as a sister among us. Do not hesitate to call upon our ranks in times of dire need." The priest presented the dagger to Ariya, to which she gingerly took. It was light, well-balanced, and designed with parrying and hooking an opponent's weapon in mind. She noticed at the bottom of the pommel was a rune coin etched in the sword and scales of Tyran's emblem. "I am deeply humbled by this," Ariya whispered. "Although I'm not a sentinel yet, I'm still in training." Father Azorius smiled. "Not yet, but you will be."